All right, everybody. Oh, yes, it's working. Awesome. So, thank you for all coming, and thank you for being quiet so quickly. If I could just invite Willow up to the stage. Thanks, Willow, to open for us with a karakia.
Ko rangi nui kei runga, ko paputuanu ki kei raro mi ngā tāngata kei wainga i tihei mauri. Firstly, I'd like to begin by acknowledging this beautiful place that many of us are lucky to call home, Mohua. So firstly, to ngā maunga, parapara, wharepapa, me piku ki runga, tēnā koutou. The awa tākaka, me paripaka oho, tēnā kōrua. The mighty kahirangi, tēnā koe. And to te puna waioro, te waikoro pupu, te paripapa eko that feeds her, the dwelling place of our kaitiaki te iawa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. To those in our community who have passed in the recent times, many old, some young, tēnā koutou. Ki ngā rangatira kaitiaki o tēnei rohe, ko John Ward Holmes, ko Janice Manson, ko John Mitchell, mui mai rā. Rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, tihei mauri oi. The group here would also like to acknowledge mana pino o tēnei rohe, the kaitiaki, the rangatira of this area, Ngāti Tama, Te Atiawa, Ngāti Rāua, o reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. And I can see many wonderful leaders and elders in our community here today as well. Some up on the stage, some in the crowd. I'd just like to acknowledge all of the efforts, the service that you've given to this place to make it what it is. Tēnā koutou. And one last thing for karakia that I'd like to offer for the kōrero today is just that we all hold the future generations of this place in our hearts and our minds when engaging in this kōrero, when thinking about decision making together for what's best for our whenua, for our community, for our life. Whakataka te au ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, e tio, e hoka, e hau, tihei, mai, kia tātou.
Thanks so much, Willow. Beautiful. And thank you for reminding us to all hold the future generations in our hearts. It's just gorgeous. So my name's Debbie, for those of you that don't know me, and I've been asked by the group that have organised the meeting today to be your MC for this meeting. The meeting's been organised by a loose group of concerned community members. Lots of people have already been working very hard behind the scenes for this community on this issue. So before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. The emergency exits, there's 3 of them, one there, and one right at the back. If there is an emergency, please, we need to gather behind the building on this side, not over on this side. So if everyone could just remember that. Toilets are just in the foyer over here, and now is a good time to switch off your phone or put it on silent. So I'll just give you guys a minute to do that. There's an interesting thing happening with the sun here. It is directly in the eyes of anyone standing at the left hand. So please excuse us putting our hands up so that we can see you and not just be blinded by the sun coming in through the window. So I have an apology from Damien O'Connor, who would really love to have been with us at this meeting. Are there any other apologies that people want to put Forward. No, that's great. Okay. So, welcome. We've all been invited here this evening so we can find out more about the fast track legislation that could impact on Golden Bay. In its current form, the fast track legislation takes away the usual environmental controls and scrutiny, including the protection of the water conservation order that has been fought for so hard by this community. It opens the door for Siren Gold to establish a gold mine here, which could result in the pollution of our water by arsenic. Some of us will be personally affected because we live in the Tāwhaka Valley or draw our water from the aquifer, or because we own or work in a business that will be affected. Others of us care about the te onga of Waikoropuku Springs, a sacred and beautiful place, which would also be affected. Some of us rely on the tourism the springs bring into the bay. So our focus here today is the why, it's the water, and how to ensure it stays healthy. Tonight we're going to hear from some people who will be most affected by the potential water pollution. We're going to hear from individuals and businesses whose water comes from the aquifer or who live nearby the proposed processing site. We'll hear from TDC representatives about the difficulties they'll face in meeting the requirements of both the Water Conservation Order and the Fast Track Bill. We'll be live streaming this session so that people around New Zealand can join us. Some of you have asked why Siren Gold is not at this meeting. Siren Gold have made it clear that they will not be attending any public meeting in Golden Bay. So at the end of all of the presentations, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. We'll also talk about what you can do right now to make a difference and how you can register your interest in being kept up to date with developments as it becomes clearer what is proposed. You may have seen a sign-up sheet at the door, and I saw lots of you filling that in. Thank you for that. And that's where you can join up on the email list. If the legislation does get passed, that doesn't require the Water Conservation Order to be taken into account. So we know in that case there'll be a known risk, and we'll want to take action. And then after the question time, there'll be an opportunity to share your views. So we will hold all the questions till the end, till we've heard from all the speakers and the presenters, and then take questions then. We'd like to thank Golden Bay High School, who have provided the hall for free. All of the advertising and other costs, which is around $500 so far, have been funded personally by the people who have organised this meeting, some of whom are speaking tonight. So they'd be grateful if you could make a donation towards that. And there are koha boxes, I saw them on the chairs over there, if you'd just like to pop a donation in there. So this is a very emotive topic, and it's important that during the course of this evening, we all remain respectful of each other, even where we may not share the same views. Please, just one person speaking at a time, and make sure that we are using good listening skills. To kick us off with the speeches, I'd like to introduce Andrew Yule, who's going to open and give us an introduction. Thanks, Andrew.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Andrew Yule, as was said. Now, that's the first slide, and my reason for including it is so that we're all quite clear where Sam's Creek is. It's the red circle just above where the sun is, very fortunately, and it shows the other big line is the outline of the Takaka catchment. All that water flows out through Waitapu. and that's the natural ecological division. So, I'll have the next slide, please. This is what the river valley looks like just next door to Sam's Creek. And the next one, please. And this is just a little way up the rocks beside Sam's Creek. Gives you an idea of just how steep and vertical the country is. And we have another one looking upstream in Sam's Creek. Again, extremely steep, extraordinarily scenic country. And this was once what they call a penny plain. It wasn't dipped like that until Sam's Creek eroded it. It was flat across the top once. And I would only imagine that you would wonder, well, where did all the rock go? And in the next slide, there's a bit of a clue. This is the Takaga Valley, seen from somewhere close to the top of Takaga Hill. The big rock in the foreground is very upper marble, and it underlies the valley, and it's up both sides of the valley like that. And in between, the land that we're sitting on now, as we listen and speak, is on gravel. And all of that gravel has washed out from Upper Col over probably the last 2 or 3 million years. I'm now going to go back into, sorry, no, I'm a little ahead, but that's good, leave it like that. That roughly shows where the gravel is at the surface. And so anything that flows down the river will be intermixed with that gravel. And the next one is, that is roughly the extent of the marble. The lower half in the picture, the southern half, is where the marble is directly accessible from the surface, and that aquifer fills up from whatever rain water and river water falls on that area. And to the north, it's actually underneath the confining cap, which applies to where we are now. So under us, we've got gravel, which is where Takaga draws its water from and is in contact with the Takaga River. And then there's the impermeable layer called Mohua Golden Bay, and underneath that is the marble aquifer carrying on with its water out to sea. Next, please. Around about 2/3 of the water which sinks into the river, into the aquifer, emerges many years later at Waikato, which we're all familiar with, and the other third of it emerges in submarine springs out in the bay. Small animals living in the aquifer turn the ordinary river water into the stunningly clear water that we see at Waikato. I want to emphasize that the clarity of the springs is unique in the world, and we have a unique stigofauna there and bacteria that carry out this clarity enhancement like nothing else in the world does. So we will go back now to a larger view of Sam's Creek. This is roughly, it's from Upper Takaga to almost the Coal Power Station. And it gives you an idea of just how steep it is. And Sam's Creek is actually labelled right in the middle of it. There is another view of this particular territory, which looks like this. And this is the graphic of the mining company superimposed on top of the map. And the wiggly line through the middle of it, the dark line, is where the ore body is. So it spans both sides of the river. It's fairly narrow, and it steeply slopes down into the ground for several hundred meters. I'll have the next one, please. So, the question is, where will the waste go? Now, on the best published estimation, the ore body that they want to mine consists of around about 11 million tonnes of volcanic rock, containing 75,000 tonnes of arsenic, 3,500 tonnes of zinc, 1,500 tonnes of lead, and 19 to 25 tonnes of gold. That's not 1,000 tonnes, it's just 19 to 25, mainly as sulfides. The company anticipates exhausting the ore in 10 years unless it finds more while it's mining. The company's current plan is to open an underground mine and perhaps an open pit too. It will grind the ore into a powder and use froth flotation to concentrate the sulfides and the gold into about 5% of the whole volume. It will truck the concentrate to Territory and export it for further processing overseas, and it will put the other 95% of the material in a waste heap somewhere undeclared yet near the mine. So you just have to, you know the territory, you imagine where it might go. Now, from a financial point of view, it's a gold ore. However, from an ecological point of view, it's more practically regarded as an arsenic ore. The flotation process cannot achieve a perfect separation, so there will likely be several thousand tons of arsenic remaining in the waste heap. The company is uncertain at this stage about the details, so it may change its plans. For example, Federation Mining changed their plans in Snowy River, and they eventually got, by a non-notified declaration, they got permission to do the cyanide separation right there beside the mine. And that's a possibility here. Siren Gold haven't ruled it out. They may also sell on the mining rights to another company before or during the operation. That's normal commercial practice. The ecology problem, or risk, is that if the waste heap leaks sometime into the future, it will get into the Targaga River, or the gravels, or the Marble Aquifer, and poison them. Now, I've got a few legislative statement extracts. The risk is, unfortunately, magnified extremely by the government's fast-track bill. Normally, a mine application like this would go through the Resource Management Act with input from public and experts, leading to either approval with conditions or rejection. In our case, the Resource Management Act includes the Water Conservation Order granted last year to protect the outstanding qualities of Te Waikato Pupu, and also the Marble Aquifer. But as fast track currently stands, it bypasses all that and replaces it with an appointed panel with final decision by 3 ministers. So that really is a rough outline of the picture, and other speakers are going to elaborate on that.
Kia ora koutou. So hands up if you heard the recent Fresh FM interview with Grant Knowles and Paul Angus from Siren Gold. Yeah, quite a few of you. Cool. So for me, there was very little in the interview to reassure me around the safety of our water. There was a lot of uncertainty around the process, and there were quite a few gaps. So we put a number of questions to Paul Angus, but despite having openly invited further questions from the community at the end of the interview, he wasn't willing to answer them, unfortunately. So my name is Julie Downard. I have a background in chemistry and chemical engineering. I'm not a mining expert. I've done a lot of reading of scientific mining papers and resource application consents over the last wee while. And I'm going to try and fill in some of the gaps that Mr. Angus left as I take you through the risks to our wai, our whenua and our tangata, our water, land and people from the mining process. I'm going slowly because I'm hoping that by the time I get to my slides, someone will gone under that noise here. True. Right. Yeah, so we'll just do our best. So this is not the kind of mining where you find nuggets of gold lying in the rock or even flakes of gold. The gold is microscopic, and it's bound up with arsenic and sulfur. And to get it out, you have to crush the rock to a fine dust and then extract the gold using chemicals. So if the mine is underground, if you can see that. Maybe you can see the important bit. If the mine is underground, they'll be tunnelling to get to the gold seam. And although they left the door open for open cast mining. So this is what a mine entrance looks like. And this is the entrance at Snowy River, which is quite similar to what's proposed here. So first of all, there'll be blasting to get the rock out. And then there'll be crushing. And the noise of the crusher, which is a heavy industrial operation, is 116 decibels. So that's like being in the front row of a rock concert or right next to a power saw. And that will be going 24/7. So the World Health Organization safe daytime limit is just 55 decibels, 45 at night. I'm not sure how they would achieve that for the people living nearby. The mill dust that results is highly toxic to touch and inhale. Can you see that? Sort of. So chemicals are added to froth it all up so that the arsenic and gold dust floats to the top. So those chemicals end up in the waste, and some of them are really toxic. The stuff that floats to the top is called the gold concentrate. So that concentrate has most of the arsenic in it, and most of the lead, and most of the zinc, and most of the gold. So someone else is getting that problem if they ship it offshore, as they've said they will. I have to say that transporting the concentrate somewhere else is a high-risk activity. So if there's an accident, if they drop one of the containers and the concentrate escapes, there'll be arsenic everywhere. So yeah, processing is 24/7. And the gold sulfide ore only gives a very small amount of gold per tonne. So it generates significant amounts of waste. And the rest of the arsenic and the lead is in the waste, which looks something like this. And I had to find a picture of a filter cake because, ladies, I kept saying it was like an eyeshadow compact, and none of my male friends had any idea what I was talking about. So, the rest of the waste contains rock dust, chemicals, sulfur compounds, and 3,700 tonnes of arsenic. So that's more than enough to kill every person on the planet. 100 bigs each. And if they find that the seam is bigger, then it'll be even more. So that stays here in a waste heap, close to the processing plant to save transport costs. So we're talking Upper Takaka. And while they're building the waste heap, they would need to keep all of that damp or contained to prevent it from blowing around, drying out and blowing around. So that's most of the rock that they've extracted contaminated with arsenic. So that's a huge amount of waste to try and keep contained. And just so you get an idea of the size of waste heaps, they're enormous. So Andrew here has worked out that the Takaka CBD, if the waste was piled into an area of the Takaka CBD where all the businesses are, it would be 54 metres high. And I think at Snowy River they can build up to 50 metres high. So what could go wrong? So over time the waste with arsenic in it becomes acidic, and that allows the arsenic to leach down into the ground, and it will seep down into our aquifer. The mining industry has a pretty bad record with acid seepage. It's almost impossible to prevent it or to fix it once it's happened. And by the time the arsenic's measured in the water, it's already too late. Acid seepage also starts up most actively after the mine is closed and the mining company's long gone. Runoff is another issue, washing the arsenic into rivers and creeks. And at Snowy River, they measured those local rivers and creeks and they did have elevated arsenic concentrations. Another thing that can happen is erosion of the tailings heap, the waste heap, or bank failure. So that's what you can see in this picture. So if there's an earthquake or a flood or a drought, the lining cracks, the arsenic waste can get out and get everywhere and dry up and blow around in the wind. And all of these failures are totally common. They're not rare. And Andrew's going to tell you some more about some in a minute. So to make the waste safe, the usual treatment is to compact the soil, put a layer of clay on it, and then pile the toxic waste on top. And that's all that's inhibiting the acid arsenic seepage. Compacted soil and a layer of clay. Okay. So the toxic waste with the arsenic in it goes in the middle of the heap. So it's the pink bit that says, can you see anything? Right. It's the pink bit at the bottom that says PAF, which means potentially acid forming, which actually is sometimes called PAG, which says potentially arsenic generating. So it's surrounded by the larger chunks of clean rock that was taken out to get to the gold seam. And unlike the picture that you can see there at the bottom, the graphic, the toxic waste will actually make up more than half of the total waste. So it's not just some little cell in the middle of a big pile of rock, it's a big cell. Once completed, the heap gets capped with gravel and clay to protect it from air and water. However, the Snowy River Resource Consent application admits that typically these waste heaps are suited to arid conditions. And it's not known if there are any examples of this method of waste disposal by a modern hard rock mining operation being used in New Zealand. So what do we have in the bay? High rainfall and a temperate climate. The application then admits that oxidation cannot be prevented, so oxidation leads to the acidification. And it also notes that the waste heap becomes unstable if it gets too wet. So what we've got is, we don't know, acidification will happen, and when it's wet, it's unstable. And if the clay liner, top or bottom, cracks, or a sinkhole opens up underneath, because it is, after all, an area where there's sinkholes, it's open to speculation that anybody would be able to stop it in time. And if the waste heap is near a river or in a flood zone, which is Snowy River, it exactly is. It's 2 metres above the Snowy Creek, which floods to 2 metres. Then water can access the foot of the heap. And even with the best controls, waste heaps don't last forever, but arsenic does. So but a little bit more about that. It's not uncommon for mining companies to lose money and go bust. They start because the gold price is good, and then 10 years down the track, they go belly up. And we know, thanks Joe, that Siren's financial situation is not that great. But what happens to the waste heap if the mining company goes under before it gets capped? Who picks up the tab? So I just want to be clear, when Paul Angus says that they're not planning to use cyanide treatment here, that they'll be using flotation, he doesn't mean that they'll use flotation instead. They will use cyanide treatment because that's what comes after flotation. He's just saying that they plan to do that somewhere else. And the problem is that things often change once mining starts. So this is a quote from Gerald Freeman, who used to be the environmental technician at Oceania Gold's Reefton mine. He says that once a mine is permitted, many of the conditions of the permit are modified without public consultation. And he goes on to say the permit holders exaggerate employment and financial benefits, both local and to the country, ignoring that most of the profit goes overseas. So Snowy River also planned to do mining and to do the cyanide process somewhere else. But once they were underway, they applied to do it at Snowy River. And we know that the company doing the mining won't be Siren Gold, because they've said that. They'll pass it on to some other company. So they simply don't know or control what the mining company will do down the track. They'll just be on selling the permits that they have, and after that, things can change. So let's talk about the cyanide process. The cyanide process produces waste contaminated with cyanide, caustic soda, and sulfuric acid. And no, they don't just cancel each other out. It's so toxic that it has to be pumped back into the mine generally these days once they're done. And that's probably why Siren is insisting that they're not doing it here, because they don't want to worry us with that possibility. But once the mine closes, the groundwater returns to its natural level. And the Snowy River application actually states that when the water level gets higher than the opening of the mine tunnel entrance, the contaminants can seep out. It's the cyanide contaminants. Also of concern is that typical consents already do allow discharge of contaminant liquids to rivers. So this is one that Snowy River already has, to discharge contaminants to land at the site in circumstances that will result in that water and contaminant entering the Snowy River. And that's even without the fast track bill. So arsenic can typically be discharged into our waterways at 0.1 milligrams per litre, even though the safe limit for drinking water is 0.01. And the safe limit for aquatic creatures is 1/10 of that again. Around the world, there's been failure after failure of waste heaps and ponds. Mistakes happen, weather events cause damage, and sometimes there's a deliberate breaching of consents. So Oceania Gold Reefton was successfully prosecuted for deliberately cutting a channel in their pit wall to drain the pit after it flooded. And it released a whole lot of toxic sediment into the local creek. And they got fined just 24K. And, their comment about that was it was just a cost of mining. That's the cost of mining. It costs a lot more than that to clean it up. And in most cases, it's the local community that pays for the cleanup. So it's privatise the profit and socialise the cost. So Gerald Freeman again says, a common factor in mining accidents and malpractice is greed, and the management at Reefton were on big performance bonuses. A foreign mining company just wants the gold. It's in their interest to spend as little as required on dealing safely with waste. So what we get is 33 cents per person in total, and the risk of permanent pollution to our land, air and water. So the question is, really, is that worth the risk? So I'm now going to show you a video which describes the aftermath of a gold operation in Yellowknife, Canada. And I just want to say there's a small error by the reporter. It's not 200,000 tonnes of gold they were taking out. It was 178 tonnes. There's always two problems, aren't there?
This is Giant Mine in the Northwest Territories of Canada. There are kilometers of tunnels under this rock, and Giant Mine in the Northwest Territories of Canada. There are kilometers of tunnels under this rock, and chambers the size of city blocks that have been hollowed out. In the 20th century, more than 200,000 tons of gold were extracted from the rock underneath here. At current prices, that is somewhere over $8 billion worth of gold. There is a problem. That mining is operated from 200. Giant Mine in the Northwest Territories of Canada. There are kilometers of tunnels under this rock, and chambers the size of city blocks that have been hollowed out. In the 20th century, more than 200,000 tons of gold were extracted from the rock underneath here. At current prices, that is somewhere over $8 billion worth of gold. There is a problem though. That mining also created more than 200,000 tons of toxic arsenic trioxide dust. That's enough to kill everyone on Earth several times over. Over decades, the vast majority of it was stored in the empty, abandoned chambers left behind after mining, although some of it did get out into the environment. The mine closed in 2004. When the gold ran out, the mining company went bankrupt and left the mess for the government to clean up. Arsenic trioxide has no scent, no taste, and it dissolves in water. Right next to Yellowknife, the capital of Northwest Territories, and next to the 10th largest lake in the world.
There's 237,000 tons of arsenic trioxide, and they're currently stored in 14 underground chambers. The plan is to freeze the chambers. We're freezing the rock around the arsenic. The arsenic trioxide is a fine powder. So they will form a shell, and eventually it will freeze in, and it will become a block over time. And that prevents water from getting in and getting out and keeps the arsenic trioxide contained. So each chamber, of course, is differently shaped. Some are irregular shaped, some are very rectangular shaped. So we want to freeze 10 meters beyond all boundaries of the chambers, both on the horizontal and the vertical. We're going to freeze at least to -5 degrees Celsius. The way we're going to freeze it, we're going to use a technology called thermal siphon technology, and it's basically a technology that uses the ambient air temperature, the cold air, using a long tube filled with carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide, when it's a gas, it rises up to the top of the tube, and then if the air outside is colder, it will dissipate its heat, turn to a liquid, and gravity will drop back down to the bottom of the tube. And there it can warm up, take the heat out of the ground, and it just continually cycles extracting heat from the ground. Since we're in Yellowknife, north of 60 degrees latitude, it's colder above ground than it is below ground for the majority of the year.
Freezing with arsenic doesn't make it less toxic, but it does make it impossible for any water to seep in and then carry the arsenic out. And that was the mining company's original solution, using the natural permafrost here. And it might work if they had mined the rock above it, exposed the permafrost layer to the elements, and started to melt it. Freezing should work, but there are skeptics, and they do have a point. Freezing requires a constant upkeep. This dust is arguably worse than the radioactive waste. There is no half-life here. It won't decay over time. The dust will be just as deadly in 10,000, 100,000, or a million years.
So right now, there's nothing on the horizon. The freezing was deemed the best technology for the arsenic trioxide. So we will be funding research indefinitely until a different solution arises. We have frozen one of the chambers and did what we called a freeze optimization study. We chose one of the chambers. We installed the thermocyclone, but we also installed some freezing pipes filled with glycol to do what we call an active freeze, which will be very similar to a hockey rink. So based on that study, we determined that we could use the passive technology, which is just the thermocyclones with the carbon dioxide. It just wasn't quite as fast. So it's going to take a little bit longer, but the trade-offs are such that we don't need to use power and it's a lower maintenance over the longer term. So the remaining chambers will be frozen when we start the remediation project. It could be as early as summer of 2020, but more optimistically 2021. Our last estimate for the cost of the project was $934 million, including the care and maintenance phase that we're in right now, remediation that we'll go into in a few years, and then the long-term care and maintenance. This project has gotten approval for 100 years.
These days, countries that develop laws have regulations that mean mining companies shouldn't be able to do this. We have environmental impact studies and long-term plans, and we have public scrutiny of pretty much everything. But we still have to fix the mistakes of the past and make sure that today's mining companies can't just walk away from their legacies. Thanks to everyone at the Giant Mine Remediation Project. Fill in the description for links about them and about some of the history that I couldn't fit into this video.
So there was another video that we haven't shown you today, but all the workers doing that work were in hazmat suits. And despite that, they've still wound up with high levels of arsenic in their bodies. And at Sam's Creek, the ratio of arsenic to gold in that waste is 4 times higher than at Yellowknife. So if the arsenic escaped into the environment here, we can't rely on the freezing temperatures of northern Canada to do what they have and make it safe. Thank you.
I think I know most of you, but for those that don't know me, I'm Andy Clark. My passion is community. I have lived in this community for over 40 years and in the past have had a role in local politics. For me, community trumps politics every time, and I have no issue with giving politicians an earful, whether they be blue, red, yellow, black or green. And my community's well-being is at stake. And last month I sent out 68 emails to various MPs, and Shane Jones and I are now on first name basis. So that's tomorrow's job. I have to reply to his letters. Arsenic contamination, the next first slide. So, Malcolm will get this one. Wearing one of my other hats, I'm also the chairman of the Tukura Water Society, and I know a little bit about water. And as Julie said, you only need a very small amount of arsenic in your water, 0.01 milligrams per litre, before someone with what do you call it, the notepad would come up to you and say, I'm sorry, you've got to stop drinking your water. And when you're taking your water out of the aquifer, that doesn't give you a lot of options to change where you get your water from. If you're, and that 0.01 milligrams comes from the New Zealand Drinking Water Standards. I had a lot of trouble trying to pin down what the standards would be for showering, swimming, bathing type water, and the only local authority I came across was the Queenstown Lakes District Council, who set the standard at 0.5 milligrams per litre of water before they would be putting up signs to say it's not safe for drinking. Swimming and bathing. The standards for contamination of cereals, shellfish and fish are all measured in milligrams per kilogram mass weight of the item. And as you can see, they're still very, very small amounts before those products are not suitable for human consumption. I could not find anywhere a standard for red meat, but I could only assume that it's going to be somewhere like the 2 milligrams as stated for the fish. It would be a real shame if arsenic got into our aquifers, because places like the Top Rock swimming hole at Paynes Ford is very popular, not only for locals, but for the tourists, and no swimming signs would not be very appreciated. Heavy metals, including arsenic, is absorbed by plants from the air, soil and water. Maize being one plant that really efficiently is good at absorbing heavy metals. It's a process that's called bioaccumulation. Plants, fish and animals store, then pass on heavy metals right up the food chain to us humans at the top. According to the Ministry of Primary Industries in New Zealand, regularly eating foods with high levels of inorganic arsenic can increase the risk of skin lesions, diabetes, heart disease, and cancers, as arsenic is a known carcinogen. Because arsenic is an element that it doesn't decay, therefore it exists forever, and there is no natural cleanup. If a gold mine waste heap leaks, there is no way of remediating the problem, so the leaking will go on forever. Next slide, please. There you go. Now, I'm hoping that you've already got one of those through your mail, because it was on the back of the mail out, and it was also in the weekly a couple of weeks ago. But it's a map that shows that if you're within the outer red lines, and you take your water from the aquifer via bores, you've potentially got a problem going forward. The one in the middle marked zone 1, the slightly yellow one, is the Takaka gravel aquifers. That's the one that most of Takaka gets its water from. Zone 2 is the marble aquifer, which is at a lower level and is in fact under zone 1 as well. If you get your water from the bore from that, then you've got a potential problem. Those that live in zone 3 and take their water from zone 3, there's a lesser chance of the contamination, because zone 3, the limestone aquifer, is only partially recharged from water from the gravel aquifer. So it's not quite as bad as it could be. All these aquifers, as shown there, are all at a level that's downstream from the possible mining site shown in the dotted red circle at the far end of the map. So that's at about 140 metres above sea level. So any of the properties that take water via a bore that's below 140 metres and getting progressively less heading out to the sea, have the risk of their water supply being contaminated to a point where it won't be drinkable. The 75,000 tonnes of an arsenic mined at Sam's Creek and processed at Downard-Wilke, that's, whoa, you jumped again. That's where the circle is. That has to, that is the problem. But according to Siren Gold, over the 10 years that they will concentrate the sulfides, that's the arsenic and gold at Downard-Wilke, every day they're going to truck 146 tonnes of the toxic concentrate containing 19.5 tonnes of arsenic the 31 kilometres to Terracotta. Now, to get that and put that in perspective, that's about 5.5 50-tonne truck and trailer loads. So something like a milk tanker with its trailer is something like the size we're talking about. So every day, 24/7, there'll be 5.5 of that size of truck getting to Terracotta. So that's equivalent amount of material of 11 20-foot shipping containers worth of concentrated toxic waste. Now, we do have milk tankers that occasionally run off the road and fall over. They're not unknown to happen. Just as up the North Island, we have logging trucks that forget to stay on the road. So to have that many trucks 24/7, every day of the year for 10 years, getting to Terracotta in one piece is a big hope. And if they don't get there, then the problem is on our community. Once the waste material in its whatever sort of container is at Terracotta, it will need to be stockpiled for up to 48 days. So there is enough tonnage, being 7,000 tonnes, available to transship via a large barge to an awaiting ship to be finally processed offshore. So Terracotta doesn't really have the storage capacity. It doesn't have the craneage capacity, and any ship that's seagoing or offshore going ship has to be able to safely crane all these container type loads onto its ship to go offshore. Now that's about 560 containers in one go. So at every step of the process, there's a potential risk, and that risk falls back on us in Golden Bay. We are, the residents are the ones that pick up the environmental problem. As Julie pointed out, mining companies are good at changing their processes after the original approval had been granted. So it is most important that the possibility of 75,000 tonnes of arsenic going into a waste heap at Downard-Wilke is not lost sight of, because that's the one that would have the biggest potential risk to our aquifer. The last slide. So within the aquifer zones that I showed you, and only in zone 1 or 2, is these businesses, community facilities and residences that get their water supply from the aquifer. This is a conservative number, and it doesn't include any residences in the zone 3 property of zone 3 properties, and the thing in the zone 3 is the central Downard-Wilke water supply is also taken from the zone 3 area, and that includes the hospital, one more school, and another 50 residences. So all those residences and businesses are potentially affected. So it's a lot of people. It affects the whole of it, potentially affects the whole of the Downard-Wilke Valley. So in summary, Uncontaminated water is the lifeblood of the area from Upper Takaka to the sea. It sustains the residents, whether at home or at work, and what we grow to consume or sell to others to consume. In my view, the potential flow-on effect of contaminated water to the economy of Golden Bay would be huge, would affect property prices and undermine the potential of generations to come. Thank you.
Right. We've now heard about Siren's mining proposal and also about our environment. And the central thing that links these is the law, which states the terms and conditions on which Siren will be invited. First though, before actually going into that in detail, I want to show why it is important to get those terms and conditions right. That's the first slide, please. In May 2023, just a little over a year ago, Minto Metals announced that, without warning, that it had ceased operations at its Minto mine. The Yukon government remains responsible for the mine's remediation. This is expected to take 3 years and cost roughly 95 million, which is around about 20 million more than the financial security paid by Minto Metals. This is not some impoverished failed state, it's happening in Canada. Third world mining looks more like this. It's in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the headline was, more than 50 presumed dead after DRC mine collapse. But to return to Canada, the Minto mine is unfortunately not so unusual. Here is the Wolverine mine. A judge described it as an irresponsible mining venture that has forced Yukon to support to spend tens of millions of dollars on emergency environmental protection measures since Yukon Zinc began neglecting the property in 2017 before fully abandoning it and declaring bankruptcy. And here's the Faro mine. Production ceased in January 1998, followed by the bankruptcy of Anvil Range Mining Corporation. Cost of the cleanup is estimated at close to $1 billion. It continues to the present. Last month, a cyanide leach heap collapsed at Victoria mine, which is here. The collapsed leach heap is centre bottom in the picture. The slide involved about 4 million tonnes of material, according to Victoria Gold, half of which left the containment. Victoria Gold has stopped mining at the site. And you're perhaps thinking, oh yes, but that's overseas, we live in New Zealand. We have our own examples though. This is the Tui mine, just down the road from Waihi mine. The Tui mine was abandoned in 1973. The cleanup was completed in 2013 by the government at a cost of $22.5 million to taxpayers. A major issue there was instability of the tailings dam. Ah yes, but that only happened in the past, didn't it? However, Coromandel Watchdog comments, Waihi Gold's Martha Hill mine has generated tailings approximately 300 times larger than those at the Tui mine. If just 10% of that Martha mine tailings required similar remedial work in the future, the cost to taxpayers would be approximately $500 million. So now we come back, after establishing that we really don't want to have an accident at the mine, we come back to Siren's proposal. And here are the Siren directors. Let's assume Siren's directors are decent, honest people, that they'll keep the law of the countries where they operate, and that they have a duty to act in the interests of their shareholders. What that implies is that they will meet the environmental requirements we set for their mine operation, but they won't be using up company money on exceeding them. You may disagree or agree with that attitude, but that's the law. And we'll come back to the next one, please. This is the Resource Management Act. Now, You really would all go to sleep if I opened it up and showed you the paragraphs inside. So it's going to remain firmly shut like that with the coloured tapes in there. And that's what lawyers do to find their way around it. Our requirements are currently set through the Resource Management Act. It's been argued over and been amended for more than 30 years. It's got very complicated, and in many quarters it's not much loved. However, one thing to be said for it is that it does allow input from people who will be affected by an application publicly and through the courts. The Fast Track Bill does away with all that. It simply bypasses the Resource Management Act. In its current form, the bill allows 3 ministers to greenlight projects, even if the expert panel that they've appointed advises against them, and even if they've been previously denied consents by the courts. It will also excuse applicants from the normal requirements to apply for resource consents under the Resource Management Act. And here is the Ombudsman, who said, New Zealanders must get the opportunity to consider the evidence given to ministers. And by the way, there's no provision for that at the moment. They could receive it in secret. Unchecked executive powers, he said, would put the country on a slippery slope. So I'm coming back to our valley again, which is really where we're concerned about. Let's consider how this applies to Siren's proposal for the Takaka catchment. Their exploration licenses will expire shortly, and they must either abandon the project or apply for mining licenses this year. The water conservation order that protects Te Waikato and its aquifer operates through the Resource Management Act, so the coming fast track legislation will disregard it. You've seen this afternoon the complexity of gold extraction and mine waste disposal, and also the consequences of getting mine waste disposal wrong. The Fast Track Bill requires an applicant to explain their projects to a 4-person expert panel, who will then recommend accepting or declining it, and if accepted, then what conditions should apply. Several local people, myself included, have assembled questions and put them to Paul Angus of Siren Gold. 2 of the questions asked: you expect Siren will apply for a mining licence around September this year. In view of the uncertainty around even the key matter of whether Siren will create an open pit, how does the expert panel under Fast Track get to hear about the likely effects of Siren's proposal? My second question was, can you rule out that Siren, or any company that it sells its consents to, will ever use cyanide extraction in Golden Bay, or does that remain a possibility? He replied, as I said in the radio interview, we're largely still in the exploration phase and have not completed any design work, so we can't answer these questions. Things seem chaotic. Siren must apply for a mining licence, but it doesn't know what it wants to apply for. The Fast Track hasn't even become law yet, but the government has already invited Siren to apply under it. And you may wonder which way is up from all of this. In many ways, this mining project in this catchment, that's Siren's and the Takaka catchment, stands as an example of everything that's wrong with Fast Track. The aquifer and springs in our valley have been formally recognised as outstanding in all respects, from physical to spiritual. The core, the ore, is among scenery, as I showed right at the beginning, of national park quality and right next to Kahurangi National Park. The ore has been known but not mined for about 50 years. So it won't be any more than marginally profitable at the most. You know, if it was already rich pickings, someone would have had it already. That will, the marginal profitability status will unavoidably constrain environmental care and increase the risk of bankruptcy and mine abandonment. The proposer is a foreign company with no long-term interest in our area. The decisions on approval or not and conditions of permission will be taken by a panel appointed in Wellington with no provision for local input. That's completely excluded. There's no recourse to courts or appeal. It will also excuse applicants from applying for resource consents under the Resource Management Act. The panel is required to give more weight to facilitating the delivery of projects than considerations under any other legislation. So where does that leave us? One may feel slightly powerless in all of this, but what we can do is keep informed defend our water and our catchment with passion, and let the MPs in Wellington know very clearly what we think about it.
Just invite.
I think it might be senior.
Yeah. Senior, keep it possible.
Kia ora, ko Celia Butler Aho. I am one of 2 councillors representing the Golden Bay ward in Tasman District Council. Chris Hill, the other councillor, is here today as well. So there's a few things that you need to understand. And one is that Tasman District Council is a unitary council, which means that the regional and district local government roles are wrapped into one council. So Tasman District Council is responsible for all council activities, both regional and district. There are a couple of things that's important to understand about this. I'm not going to repeat what's already been said, but council does not want this. It will bring problems for council and it will bring problems for ratepayers. As regards the fast track bill, the only opportunity for council to respond has been via the same submission process as all of us. Local government has had not much more say than anyone else. I would add in here that the council itself feels for this community as it faces this. Council already implements a different law. We've heard about the Resource Management Act, or the RMA, and in that role, council is bound by the Environment Court through the Water Conservation Order to protect the springs and the aquifer in consultation with iwi. It is also bound to protect land and fresh water generally. Council values the Water Conservation Order. It took a while to get there, but it must be protected now. This Resource Management Act work under the RMA is underway and will result in changes to the Tasman Resource Management Plan. This is core work of a unitary council. If under the new fast track law, which is completely separate from the RMA, a gold mine is allowed at the head of the Takaka Valley, council could be required under its existing RMA obligations that we've just heard about to pick up the monitoring for the effects of the gold mine. Now, that is the council's regulatory or compliance function. Council has many more other functions which would be impacted. So, with the gold mine thrown in, you are looking at increasing costs to council to meet these regulatory obligations. And that is not mentioning other costs such as roading or the costs to Port Tarakoe, where we have a thriving aquaculture industry. Mussels are taken out to markets overseas through Port Tarakoe. Their food standards requirements are extremely high. This shipping out of the material from this Sam Creek mine would, through Port Tarakoe, would be completely incompatible with our aquaculture industry. Maybe that is a way through for this. So we really need to bear that in mind. Funds may come from elsewhere, such as the mining company, for extra costs, but it is the experience of all councils that corporate funding is limited in time and it is highly unlikely to cover all costs. So just thinking about noise, we heard mention of noise, council is required to actually monitor noise and to take action against whoever's making too much noise. So our compliance role goes right across our communities. So this brings me to the point that given that 70% of council's funding is from rates under the Local Government Act, rates will be seriously affected by this. If this gold mine goes ahead, ratepayers will end up paying more, a lot more, to protect their own environment from the effects of this gold mine. So that's me. Thank you. Kia ora.
I just invite Ida to speak.
Tēnā kohi, maro kohi mo ti hari mai ai tani rā. Greetings everyone. Thank you for coming today to hear what is obviously very important information about the protection of our unique and very special natural environment and ecosystems. The very environment that supports our human species to exist, from the first people here all the way through to us now. Without an ecosystem, and we all know there is no economy. We are all dependent on the natural world for our sustenance. So, my name is Ivor Evans, and along with my wife Rob, we live in Upper Takaka on a small farm for the past 15 years. We farm organically and regeneratively, Wiltshire sheep, we run free-range chickens, ducks and turkeys, and we grow a lot of our own food and are avid gardeners. We protect the ecosystem and environment, not only on our farm, but as far and as wide as we can. We also run Takaka Valley Farm Stay, which we have promoted all over the world. Every year we get guests attracted to this region by the promotion of how green and clean and untouched this region is. And as you well know, New Zealand government plays an enormous part in putting that image into the world. The question I ask myself, from all that I know about a fast-track mining application for a gold mine at Siren Creek, and all there is to know about gold mining is, should we be worried? Yes.
Let me deal with the cold hard facts. 1, it is proposed to build a mine in a valley that is under an emergency management plan issued by the TDC and managed by all emergency services. This plan covers the failure of the Cobb Reservoir and the destruction it will cause all the way to the coast. It not only covers dam failures or the dam wall failure, but also routine floods such as 1967, 1983 and Cyclone Gita in 2018. 2, the region of the Cobb Valley and Upper Takaka are, as we've heard today, very high rainfall, 3,000 millimetres plus. The region is also an earthquake zone. It is at the end of the Alpine Fault, which we are told by extensive studies we can expect to rupture any time in the next 60 years. The whole region of Upper Takaka is under a water conservation order to protect the Tiwakuru Spring, the cleanest water in the world. A crushing plant will be working 24 hours a day, and dust laden with arsenic and other heavy metals will get into the atmosphere, which is the case in many parts of the world. And also the wind blows in our direction to our farm. A tailings waste dam will be built to contain waste, which will include high levels and amounts of arsenic. Endless trucks will carry that to Terracoa, as we've heard today, as a slurry of pulverised arsenic rock down the Taka Valley, as we well know. Yes, we should be worried. Tourist numbers will drop right off.
They won't come to see a gold mine on the only access route to the Karahungi National Park, where many of our guests go to see the unique fauna and flora, which we point them towards. If the arsenic gets into the water or onto the land, or both, and there is an awful lot of it, as we've heard today, and remember, we must always remember that water will find its own level and will carry pollution downstream. It will be the end of the Takaka Valley, the end of dairy, the end of beef, the end of sheep and deer farming. Any farm found to be contaminated will be finished. Any river contaminated will be unfit to swim in or to irrigate from. Any bore found to be contaminated will be shut down, as well as whole aquifers. That could be the end of the drinking water of Takaka. No crops can be grown on land that is contaminated by arsenic. No remediation is possible. The arsenic is there forever. If it reaches the sea, it will affect the seafood. Imagine our products coming up positive to arsenic on testing in one of our overseas markets. Remember the infant milk formula contamination?
Yeah.
Well, this all sounds to me like absolute insanity. As absolutely insane as the gold fever that is sweeping the planet and driving the fast track of this current government. And with the promise of more jobs. Well, let me guarantee to you today, the government not be putting any money in your bank account or my bank account if Sam Creek goes ahead or is given any approval. It will be at the expense of all of us and what Mother Nature provides for us here in Golden Bay. Lose the Te Wakokoro Pupu Springs and the jewel of the crown of Golden Bay will be gone forever. Yes, I mean forever. It will be gone. We won't get it back. No generation will get it back. Everyone who lives here will be a loser. And as the North American Indian saying goes, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Morarua, Koe. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd just like to read to you all a statement from the Nelson Tasman Climate Forum. Greetings to the caring and committed people in this gathering. Nelson Tasman Climate Forum is concerned particularly with climate change, but beyond that, with ecological overshoot, the damage our society has done to atmosphere, land, freshwater and ocean. In the words of a well-known whakataiki or proverb, no, it's fine. Let me find the proverb. Toi tu te marae e tane e mahuta. Toi tu te marae e tangaroa. Toi tu te tangata. If the land is well and the sea is well, the people will thrive. Ecologist Aldo Leopold wrote in 1949, "A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise." As people who care about this planet, we're concerned with the very high carbon emissions of extractive industries. We need to be reducing emissions at about 10% a year. Our carbon budget can't afford the emissions associated with gold mining, the construction of infrastructure, the extraction of ore, crushing of rock, extraction of gold from the ore, transport of waste, thousands of litres of fuel burnt, emitting thousands of tonnes of carbon in these activities. To live in balance with nature, we need to save our use of energy for activities we agree are essential. Getting more gold is not one of them. need more gold. Most gold is used for jewellery, medals, and gold bullion stored in vaults. We don't need these things. 6% might be said to be useful. It's used in electronic devices. Almost all of them, including 1 billion new phones a year. Piles of electronic waste have a higher concentration of gold than mineral ores. We know how to extract from such sources. We don't need to mine gold. And how can any amount of gold extracted over a few decades equal the value of the natural beauty of Sam's Creek, accessible over centuries to generations that follow us? The Climate Forum stands with you in the face of this threat to your water and well-being.
I'm the last. I want to say you're a great audience. I've been sitting here watching you now for an hour and a bit. Oh, I don't know how long it's been. And it's hard going, isn't it? I mean, this is not, no one's getting up and clapping and dancing. It's really, really tough. And you're a really good group. You're listening to this very carefully. You're taking it in. And I really feel for you. It's good to be part of this community. My name's Kevin Moran. I'm the coordinator of the Save Our Springs campaign. We just do nothing else except protect Te Waikarepuku Springs. I've been asked to say a few words on the water conservation order. There's going to be short. It's a powerful legal and spiritual instrument designed to protect Te Waikarepuku Springs. The order itself is undergirded by the precautionary principle. And it took one of the top legal experts 2 hours to actually unfold the precautionary principle. Every person in this, in the legal terms, at the beginning of the environment hearing, every person in this audience today, I would sense, I'm not a mind reader, but very simply, the precautionary principle says better safe than sorry. I'm wondering if that's actually striking a resonance with us here today. Better safe than sorry. The water conservation order protects the aquifer, protects the springs by protecting the aquifer. The aquifer is at the heart of the water system. The water conservation order protects the unseen creatures of the aquifer, which scientists call stegofauna. And my friend Andrew, you spoke about them before. There's just this incredible ecosystem under the ground. It's billions of years old, not billions, millions of years old. And it's kind of, and we don't actually know what's in there. There's almost definitely be species that are nowhere else on the planet. It's an ancient system, and it's an ancient system which cleans Te Waikarepuku Springs. So the water conservation order is endangered. So we have a fantastic water conservation order. It's great, it's working today, everything's fine. But the water conservation order is endangered by the fast track amendments bill, which allows 3 ministers or the advisory panel to bypass the water conservation and allow Siren Gold to get a mining license. Andrew's already spoken about this. So what do we do? Now this thing came around the corner really, really fast, and I thought, how do we stop this? What practically we can do? And this is what Save Our Springs has done, and you can join us in this, and some of you have already, I know. Save Our Springs has created a petition with legal help from our lawyer, Sally Jett. who's an ace environment court lawyer, very experienced. And at the heart of this petition is an ask. And if you listen really carefully to it, this is what is asking. We're asking the government not to list Sands Creek Mine in Schedule 2 of the Fast Track Approvals Bill in the recognition of the significant risk to Te Waikarepupu Springs. That's the guts of it, okay? What do you reckon? Is that what we want? So the petition itself is called Don't Fast Track Waikarepupu. And so how do you sign? You can sign, probably the easiest way to get it is to, if you look at, it's on our website. So it's very simple, saveoursprings.nz. That's it. Save Our Springs, most of you know that name, .nz. You go in there and it's there. You just click on and sign it. It asks for your email address. And I just want to say there's 12 days left. They'll close it because we're going to close it just before we deliver the petition. That's the timing of it. So we've got 12 days left. So if you think, oh, I'll get around to that around the summer sometime, it'll be gone, John. You know, so 12 days left. I looked at it before I came here, 18,500 have signed that. And they've signed the petition so far. And which really would be fantastic to get to 20,000, you know, just before to take that to Parliament. And so you can sign it and you can share it with others. I worked out, we got it 114 a day for the time we've got left. We would get to that 20,000. So, so that's where we are. What can we do? We can sign that petition. If the government listens to it, I actually think we've got a chance. I know people will say, well, it's not going to happen. They've made up their mind. They might. Politicians often, not often, just about always powered by self-interest and political, just in what way the minds work. They may well think it's not worth it to leave Te Waikarepupu in there. They may well take it out and not list it. So that's my hope, and I have to work on hope. And so I'd ask you to sign the petition. And I think we've got, down the back corner there, we've got a notice about, you know, how to sign it. So go down there and saveoursprings.nz. Thanks so much.
Thank you all so much. There's been so much work gone into. Can you hear me anyway? Yeah. Okay. It's working. Oh, it's working again. Is it working again? Okay. You can hear me, right? Yes. Okay. I just want us all to put our hands together to thank these speakers for all the time they've put into this research and for sharing, there we go, it's working again, for sharing this knowledge with us. Please put your hands together. We're so lucky in this community that people are prepared to step up and take action when it's needed. So, and that's right across this community, and I love living in this community for that reason. So we've come to question time. I'm just trying to find the notes on the question. There it is. So the way we're going to work this is there's a mic up the front. Anyone with a question, please come up and use this mic. We'll just take one question at a time. Please keep your questions brief and short. This is not the time to hear a lot about other people's views. This is the time to ask questions of the presenters. There'll be a chance to share your views after the question time. Thank you.
Hi. I was just wondering if anybody could explain the difference between the arsenic present in the rock and then the one in the waste. Is it a different chemical? Is it just a matter of concentration? It's just not exposed? And how do we answer to people that ask that question?
Hello? Oh. The arsenic in the rock and the arsenic in the waste is pretty much the same. So it's just that arsenic in the rock is inside a rock, so the air and the water can't get to it. But when it's ground to a fine powder, it's exposed to air and rock, air and water, sorry. And so it can react. So that's the difference. Yeah.
So beyond signing the petition, what else can we do to take a stand to make sure this doesn't happen?
You can write to MPs with the letter writing campaign. Just look up the government MPs, write to them, and that's one further thing you can do this week.
And I think also join our email list, because we can't really answer your question, because, like you, we're making this up as we go along, and we need lots of people to help us with what we might do next.
If you've got a question, just make your way to the front.
Be shy.
I am one of those blasted MPs. I'm a Green MP coming to the meeting, but I've got a question for you. But I did want to say, you can absolutely stop this thing, and we will stand with you to make sure that you do succeed in stopping it. Right now, writing to MPs is absolutely a good thing to do. The legislation is not complete. You can get the water conservation order taken out of the fast track by putting pressure on those core MPs. Chris Bishop would be a good one to write to. Organising like this is fantastic time that you're doing this meeting now, where you can still influence the legislation. And every step of the way, you just need to send the message to us members of Parliament that you do not want this for your area, and you do not want this gold mine happening and contaminating the water, and you can succeed and you can stop it. But you have to keep making noise. So my question is, how do people, what is the next step for this? Like, it'd be great if there was another specific step that people were taking, apart from the petition and the letters to the MPs. What is the next step for this group?
Yeah, I think it's the roots bar. Yeah, that's a really good question, Steve. That's the question that we're all holding. What is the best next step? And I think it takes all of us to answer questions like that. Yeah. So we'd really like to hear from you in the next part, your ideas, your views, and join up to our email group.
Who owns the land? Who owns the land?
Kristen's here.
Sam's Creek, who owns the land?
Come here.
I've got a question for Celia. The council doesn't want this, you tell us. What are you going to do? Surely you have other levers that you can pull. My experience is that there's a process when you work with the council. You've got resource management, but you've also got things like building consents. Can you refuse them? Can you put conditions on them that will control?
Well, the problem is that the legislation is not complete yet. We don't know what laws are actually going to be bypassed by this fast track legislation. It's completely separate from existing legislation. It may allow things to happen that don't fit under existing laws. But we have obligations under the RMA, and so when we say that the water conservation order is being left out, council is still bound under the RMA to actually do the things that it's required to do. So this is the conundrum of council. So council has to continuously or continue with talking to government, trying to lobby, and that's what we do. Our Mayor Tim King is in Wellington, lobbying as hard as you can. But council is in the dark as well. Local government is in the dark as well. Thank you.
Who owns the land? Is it Dockland? Who that Siren Creek area? Who owns it?
I could perhaps answer that one fairly sideways. In the end, it doesn't matter who owns the land because they only own the top so many inches of it. And the Crown-owned minerals include gold, and so that is entirely separate from the mining license. If you get a mining license, you can mine under somebody else's land. I understand from the gossip that Siren Gold has actually bought a piece of land near Barron's Flat, but that's gossip so far. And they may use that to put in the tunnels from, we don't know. But irrespective of who owns the land, the government owns the Crown-owned minerals, which is why they're called Crown-owned minerals.
Thank you.
So I can add to that on the Sam's Creek side of the river, land is owned by lands in two different sections. One is called the Sam's Creek Reserve, and the other is still part of Northwest Mason Forest. So it's all owned by the Crown. But as you heard, they want to mine on both sides of the river, and as Andy said, it doesn't matter who actually owns the land. When you've got a mining license, you can go for it. Hi,
this question is for Celia. Did I hear you right when you said that the rates fund the Tasman District Council by 70%? Or, my question is, does the national government fund through our taxes the regional government?
In New Zealand, actually, no. So the way local government works is that it's basically largely dependent upon taxes, and the government does pay for some things, like half of our roading costs, and there are other things that they pay for, but the bulk of the council income is through property rates. So that's your question.
Hi, I just want to ask Andy Clark a question. In your speech, in your early speech, you thought that there was no arsenic going into the ground in Golden Bay.
Going under the ground?
No, into the underground aquifer. Right at your early stage of your speech, you said, I don't think there is any arsenic going into the underground aquifer. Okay. The question is, we all drink wine, we all drink beer, we all eat kiwi fruit. I'm pleased that Golden Bay isn't like Blenheim, because Blenheim lives on a arsenic valley because of your wine. It's your tannalised post timber that puts arsenic into the ground.
So what's the question?
Well, I asked you because you said early in your speech you didn't think there was arsenic going into the ground.
Currently.
In Golden Bay.
Okay, I don't recall saying that.
Okay.
And I have to comment, I did some research on the Blenheim issue, And in fact, there are outcrops in the back country of Marlborough that have high arsenic content within the rock, and that's primarily where the leaching's coming from for the underground water in the Blenheim area rather than the Tannoise Post. So I was surprised to read that.
Yeah, okay, well, I must have misunderstood you, what you said.
No,
But I'm just letting people know that arsenic has been in this valley, going into the underground aquifer for the last 60 years. From Tannoise Post.
Are there any other questions? Yep, here's another couple coming up.
So at one point I was doing environmental management down in Canterbury. And I was wondering what sort of monitoring you actually do in this region. I haven't really seen much in terms of water. It kind of comes off of a question that was just asked. Do we do any water monitoring here in Golden Bay? Soil sampling, stuff like that.
Celia, I think maybe you're right.
Yeah, so the council is responsible for monitoring water and generally, and that is, they have to monitor water to make sure that it's safe to swim and it's safe to drink. And so there's a lot of monitoring going on. There are bores that are put down into the ground, and samples are taken to check on water quality. But where people have their own personal private bores, which is actually most of Antarctica, that is not checked. So that is actually up to individual people to make sure that their own water is safe.
Just a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up.
Kia ora, my name's Tim. It's not really a question as such, but I just wanted to offer that there's many ways that we can all support this kaupapa, I think. And there's so many talented musicians, artists in the Bay, and there's many ways to amplify the voices of our waters. And so I would encourage everyone to use their voice in whatever way they can through social media. We're a very creative bunch of people, and I think gathering is another good thing to do. Any opportunity to bring us together to sing for our waters, to offer prayers for our waters. I think any forum like that is really positive. And yeah, I'm also collaborating on a film with Kevin and Andy and a few others that we're hoping to get out next Saturday. So I'll be sharing that far and wide via social media and pumping it out to, getting in front of many people and making this a national issue, I think is like important. Because there's like really, if we can't protect these waters, then I think we all need to take a really hard look at ourselves, and I think that is really what's going to get over the line for us, is making this a national issue. So the more that anyone can post on your social media, do anything that you can, because it all counts. Just keep using your voices. There's much that we can do about this. Yeah, join us at Parliament as well. Come to Wellington, it's another.
Thanks, Tim, for all your mahi with the filming.
One more question. One more. Ask a question. Tell us about civil
I guess the question is, when do we start thinking of peaceful acts of civil disobedience? Like, if this does go through and they do start to mine, like, what can we do then? It's not writing petitions and asking MPs. Like, if they fail us, how are we going to stop this? And the road going there is like fairly fragile. But what about having an occupation up there? Like, what are the other things we could do that's not just writing and signing and sharing? Because that's all great, but if that doesn't work, like, I'm not prepared to see this mine go through.
Sure, sister.
nor am I. A lot of people are looking ahead. I mean, we're doing things one step at a time. Right now, Xavier Springs is getting a petition. I really echo with my brother Tim about getting it nationwide. So we've got that going on. But once the fast track comes along, if that comes through, and they start to look at building the mine, everything changes. And what you're talking about is disobedience, occupations, you name it, all that stuff comes on. Peaceful, but it all comes on the table. It's certainly being thought about now, not planned, but thought about. It sits on the table. Okay, Julie can do that. Yeah.
Yes, it's been before the sitting committee, so we're expecting the answer about September, and then it's got 2 more readings to go through in the House. Yeah, so it's a little way off.
Okay, well, that brings us to the conclusion of the formal part of these proceedings. Willow, I just would like to invite you up to give us a closing karakia, please. So just while Willow's coming up, just a couple of things. If you have more questions that you would like that occur to you after this, please email them to samscreek@gmx.com, and I think that will be on the notice board at the back. The organisers would particularly like to thank all those people who sent in scientific papers and information to help put the presentation together. You've heard about the delivery of the petition to Wellington, and really the big thing is we'd like to thank all of you for coming. It's fantastic. This community is just amazing, and to have that support and everybody listening so well to all of these speakers is great.
Kia ora, thank you for all the information and the different speeches. It was enlightening. Kia wātea, kia mama, te ngāka e te tinana, te wairua i te ara takata. Koe a rai o ngō whakaeria ake kira me kia tina, koe e tā i e.
Thanks, Willow. So now we're moving into the more informal part of the evening, and this is where you get to have your say. So we have a number of ways that you can do this. Firstly, we invite you to write down your views and pin them to the boards over there so that everyone can read them. We'll collect them all at the end and may use them to tell the story of how this community feels. Alternatively, you can go to any one of the people at the back. Could the people at the back with the phones put their hands up, please? Oh, no, Axel. Go to Axel. Sorry. And record a short clip, a short video clip, and these could be used for a web campaign, for example, to post on an MP's page. You can also send through an email with your thoughts. And if you haven't noticed already, there are printouts at the back of various maps and papers that have formed the basis of tonight's presentation, which you're welcome to look at. So once again, many, many thanks, and please share your thoughts, pin them on the board, or come and do a video with Axel. Thank you.